Hey guys, Dan here. Today we're having a look at the iRacing sequential shifter and handbrake combo. So we'll start with the price. The combo is 540 euros, including taxes, free shipping, made in Europe, in Bulgaria. And you can also get a customized version where you can customize the color of the whole unit pretty much for 564 euros. It's definitely priced on the higher side, but to spoiler you here first, I think it's definitely worth it. The build quality is mostly good. We have a very nice aluminum construction. Everything feels super solid. The standard version here is finished in black. Looks very nice, very clean. I love the stealth look this gives. I would prefer a black knob for the shifter and the handbrake and maybe black screws, but that's just tiny details. The only thing I do not like is this little lever here on the sequential shifter, which is just not mounted insanely sturdy, but I think it's meant to be like a neutral or reverse button. It feels analog, but it's a digital output, just a button. So this feels a little bit flimsy, but for me personally, it's not a big deal because I never use this, but this just does not fit the overall very high build quality of the rest of the unit. I want to start with the shifter. The shifting force required to shift is about 8 kilograms and it feels insanely nice. I've used the V1 version of the iRacing sequential shifter till now, and this V2 is even nicer in shift feel. Many shifters for sim racing feel more like a fancier toy, but this, in my opinion, feels like it could be straight from a real car. There's something about it that feels very realistic and satisfying to use. I'd say the travel is a little higher compared to V1, and the shift point also is a bit more pronounced, a bit clickier. Not that V1 was bad, but V2 actually managed to improve on that. Inside the shifter there are two hall sensors that basically check whether the shifter is in this center position or to one of the extremes. So in the old version, reed switches were used, which is basically like similar to a hall sensor, but it will introduce wear, and this is a wear-free system, so this should last forever. One thing to keep in mind, this is definitely not a quiet shifter. I mean, you can maybe hear it here in the video. If it's mounted to the rig, that obviously will make it even a bit more loud, because not everything is mounted super solidly to the rig, and it will resonate more, and it's not super loud. If you wear headphones or even if you drive with speakers, like the sound it makes actually makes sense for a shifter. It sounds good, if that can be a thing. But I'm not sure if you do not pay attention to shift quietly, if you just go full action on the shift lever. If you have a baby sleeping next door, I think that could be a problem. But it's often a compromise between how satisfying is a shifter to use and the volume. I don't think I've ever used a shifter that is quiet and still feels as nice as this. So for me, it's a nice compromise to make. But if you want a really quiet shifter, I would probably not get this one. I've recently been able to quickly test the SimLab SQ1, which feels like the opposite, not super satisfying shift feeling, but also very quiet. So it's good to have an option for everything, but just keep in mind this is not one of those super quiet shifters. Then if we look at the handbrake, the build quality is just as good as on the shifter. Obviously no little lever here because it's just an analog output signal of the handbrake. The lever itself is slightly shorter than on the shifter, like seen in many rally cars, and the spacing of the two units seems to be nice, at least for my personal preference in ergonomics. This works very well. I just left it in the default. I have mounted it slightly angled on the rig, which feels very good to me, but if you want to, you can further customize the position of the handbrake by rotating it slightly outward. Loosen these two screws, and then you see there's this elongated hole that lets you customize the position a bit more. The pull force on the handbrake is around 10 kilograms. I have no idea if this is realistic. According to ChatGPT, real rally cars are somewhere in between 10 and 20 kilograms, so it seems to be in the ballpark of that. But I've never driven a real rally car, so I cannot comment on that. But the 10 kilogram it does provide it feels more towards the lower side of pull force from all the handbrakes that I've tested, but still more than sufficient, I would say. We do have an analog output signal, of course. It's measured by a hall sensor, and there seems to be some baked in. I guess the hall sensor is not linearized, some slight exponential curve relationship between the position of the lever and the output signal. I don't think this is a big deal when you use it, but it's probably not a handbrake I would use if you rely on hand controls and want to use it to replace your normal brake. I would probably get something with a load cell in that case. But yeah, as a standard handbrake, this is really done very well. The electronics, you cannot customize anything. Little PCB inside here. I don't think this is super elegant. There's a ton of space inside the unit. I would love to see a PCB that's maybe embedded in here. But on the other hand, you mount this to the rig, you hide this somewhere below, and then it's out of the way and it's not a big deal. It's just not the most elegant solution in my opinion. But yeah, overall 540 euros seems like a high price, but I think it's absolutely justified. I think it's priced well for what you're getting. In this case, you do get a shifter and a handbrake that do not feel like a toy. I mean, in the end, they are toys, but still there's something about it if you shift with a shifter that just makes you feel good. It's hard to really describe in a review video, but it definitely wants me to start WRC and do some rallying all the time. So I think that's a good sign. The handbrake obviously is quiet, but keep in mind the sequential shifter is not super quiet. So if you're looking at something that will not disturb your environment too much, I think the sequential shifter does not fulfill that criteria. But if you have your own space, if you do not need to be super quiet, then I think this is probably the best sequential shifter that I've used. My favorite before was the V1 and they improved on the V2, so this only makes sense. But yeah, that's it already for the review. I mean, it's a shifter and a handbrake. If you have any questions, put them in the comments down below. I'll try to answer them all. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel to not miss any future videos, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye bye.